Several reasons. She was a reporter in California during the UFO sightings, which she'd like you guys to read up here. She was on the Carol Burnett show twice when she was in California. Yes, you were. Don't argue. She knows the difference between a column and an article. She knows how to cook the books and write cookbooks. And she just started a new career as someone who apprehends cat bandits at the Cape Girardeau Public Library at our last meeting. So let's give it up for Sue Vogelsinger.
Hi there. What?
We can hear you anyway. We'll be good.
Are you sure? I've never done this before. Don't ever do this again.
You're on for next month, too.
Yeah, then what's that lifetime member thing just means from now on every month
Every
or
time.
two. Yeah, every time.
That's the
You didn't
fee.
tell her that part of it? Oh.
Not till now.
What am I supposed to talk about, Bob?
Your favorite story reporting on the UFOs. Then you have to read one of your stories or just recite it from memory. And
That's
then you
why I
have-
brought that.
Then you have to sing.
Well, disregard everything he said. Anyway, I have had a very unusual career, you might say, spitting pineapple on the podium. God has blessed me in many ways. It's just kind of been surreal at times, to say the least. And I'm very grateful. And, you know, getting to meet nice people like you has been a blessing in its own right. You know, the Writers Guild is special, very much. And as far as my writing career, it began by accident. My husband worked for McDonnell Aircraft, and we got transferred a lot. And we were in California, and I was looking for something to do to make money, to pay the bills, you know. So I took a job taking ads over the phone at the Dean Lesher place, publishing. It was a big old place up in Walnut Creek. You know, and so I'd answer the phone, and they'd tell me 3-bedroom home nestled on a tree-studded lot and all this kind of stuff. And that's pretty simple, and, you know, I could manage to do that, except one day I did I really didn't. That woman wasn't speaking clearly. And so she said, 3-bedroom home nestled on a tree-studded lot at Pitt River. I thought she said tit. So that's what I put in the paper. Needless to say, all hell broke loose. I didn't get fired, but I said that's what it sounded like over the phone. You know, they don't talk well. So then
They had a lot of people looking at that property.
well, that tore up the news of the room, I'll tell you. I was forever known as Miss Mm-hmm. Anyway, so then one day the boss came out of his little cubby hole, and he said, there's a job opening down at a little town called Pleasanton from here, about 14 miles, for a newspaper reporter. Anybody want to try that? Not knowing a thing about it, I went down, and I got hired because I was old. I cried all the way home. I got hired because I was old. Well, the rest of the reporters were probably about 19, and the old man, the managing editor, was tired of that. And he wanted somebody with some sense. Little did he know. But anyway, I got hired. The minute I walked in for work, the city editor took one look, knew I was green as grass, and started me out writing obituaries. So I did that for a while. And after a while, I kind of got the hang of things, and the other reporters were helpful. They helped me out a lot, you know, told me some.
Did you make the same mistake writing obituaries?
No, I'm very careful. It wasn't my mistake.
Didn't work that one in.
It was the lady reporting, telling me about the house. She didn't speak clearly, Tom, you know.
That's what she gets.
Anyway, so after I'd been on the newspaper for quite a while, went into work one morning, and the city editor, a guy named Mike Zampa, who's still with us out in Lafayette, California, and he said, I got a story I want you to cover today. And I said, what's it about? And he said, UFOs. And I went, okay, what? So I thought, all right. So I'd never liked to tape record an interview because it takes too long to retranscribe, you know, get it all out. But I thought for this, I better get it on tape. And it was a man and his wife and young son. And I brought the entire thing there so you can read more about it if you care to. Describes it in length, and even a hypnotist got in on it. It was quite a thing. And so somehow I keep getting hooked up with UFOs. I don't know, something weird there. But anyway, I had each person come into the room separately. The father came in first. I took his story, and the mother, and then the son. And everybody told the same story, drew the same picture. Their home was situated below one of those big round water tanks, that was up on a hill. And they all described this thing up there. And of course, they're alleged water seekers, so that kind of made sense, what little I know from outer space. But anyway, it was interesting. And then the young man came in last, 16-year-old. And I still get chills thinking about him. He came in, he said, "Is there a word called majestic?" And I kind of froze, and I said, "Yes, son, there is. It means something just spectacularly beautiful, and you're just kind of awesome in your vernacular, And he said, "That's what it was." I still get goosebumps hearing him. And I said, "Oh," and he said, "Yeah." He said, "Everybody else was running around calling the sheriff and doing their thing." He said, "I just went outside in the front yard and sat on a bench and watched it." And I said, "Well, what did it do?" And he said, "Well, it kind of floated down off the water tower, over the house, over the front yard, and down toward the Livermore gravel pits, which was a quarry that everybody knew about in the area, kind of like the old Marquette thing." And he said it just floated down there and hung for a while, and then it was gone. Just like that. And that's what I thought, there might be something to this, because that 16-year-old boy just really kind of nailed it. I don't know, it was just kind of fun. Anyway, that was about one of the most interesting stories I ever got to do, and the one I can remember the most. And that's why I brought the copy of the thing, because a board-certified California hypnotist got in on the thing, and he called me and he said, "I think," because there's more than one story there, I said, "I think one lady was visited, and that was the woman that was up in the middle of the night feeding her baby and saw these flashing lights and thought it was just police, something, and just went back to bed." But another lady had a swimming pool, and she said the water depth went down dramatically after the flashing lights episode. So it was because they were water seekers. This was strange. So I finally ended up calling, the hypnotist wanted the lady's name, and I said, "I can't give you that, that's not allowed, but I'll call her. If she wants to talk to you, fine, So then I don't know if you know, there's a UFO reporting center in Seattle, Washington. Do you know that? It's still there, and it's run now. The director's Peter Davenport. He's an old St. Louis boy, in fact. Anyway, after I went through all that stuff with that story, no, I'm not nuts now. Anyway, I called the Seattle UFO Reporting Center, and I said, "Was there anything reported in the area of Dublin, San Ramon, California lately?" And she said, "Honey, that thing was coming right down the San Ramon Valley." And that's when I thought, well, okay. And then I think you all know about the 1941 sighting, allegedly in Cape Girardeau, with Reverend Huffman going down to check out the dead aliens. That's all over the internet. That's common gossip now. But when I was 12 years old, living in Morley, I well remember somebody coming up to me and say, "Sue, did you know there was a UFO sighted near Morley?" Well, when you're 12 years old living in Morley, that didn't mean a whole lot, just, okay. So what, big deal. But anyway, it's an interesting thing, and it kind of woke me up, so that was about it. And other than that, I just did daily newspaper reporting, and now I write a weekly column for the Banner Press. I think Julie knows all about that. And was asked to do that because of my newspaper experience, well, I'm not sure about that, but anyway.
Tell us about the song that you wrote for
Oh, well.
Carol Burnett Show.
Well, once when we were transferred so many times by McDonald. We were transferred from St. Louis, you know, the home office, down to Cape Canaveral, Florida. And he was on Project Mercury, the program, you know, with the 7 astronauts. And as a side story, I once smacked Alan Shepard in the ribs. And now when I look at the moon, I think, I hit the man in the moon. No, well, we were the launch party dance. They always had a party after each launch, you know, and it was a standard company dance. And Alan was swinging around with his partner, you know, and every time he'd go by my husband and me, he'd clip me one. The third time I said, you do that again, you're going to get it. And he did it, and I let him have one in the ribs. He said, you weren't kidding, were you, Sue? I said, no, don't mess with people from Missouri, you know. Anyway, that was just kind of funny. And so while we were there, I had taken my sons to school. They were, you know, and came home, and this song pops in my head, literally, just bang. So I wrote it down, and my mother was an accomplished musician, and she taught me to read notes and stuff like that. So I had a piano. So I sat down and scribbled out the basic thing, and there was an article in a local paper, questions, kind of like our speak out, you know, said, how do you get you know, if you have questions. So I wrote and said, how do you get a song copyrighted? So I got a phone call. It was a musician there on the beach at Cocoa Beach, or Ramada Inn, I think, played there, and he said, they gave you the wrong information. That's not what you do to get a song copyrighted. He said, would you like for me to help you? Oh, yeah, all the help I can get. So he came out, did the chords and the whole works for the song, which was called Just Talkin'. And after we got it all finished, or he did, I said, well, what do I do now? And he said, well, if you ever get sent to California, you might try to give this to Carol Burnett. It's her kind of song. And that kind of stuck. Well, we didn't get sent to California for another year, but that stuck. So when we got there, I wrote for tickets, and meanwhile I'd learned to transcribe Braille code. I always wanted to do that, so I ended up working with children that were blind, and that's one of the best jobs I ever did. Loved it. Anyway, so I was sick that day, and I was staying home, and my oldest son, who came in, he said, Mom, this is the day we're supposed to go see Carol Burnett. And I said, I'm not well enough, honey, I just can't make it. He said, yes, you are. You got the tickets, you're going. We'll get Grandma. I'll fix a bed in the back seat of the car, which was a GTO. Yes, I wish I still had that car. A 68 GTO, yes, sir. Anyway, so I did, and when we got there, I just said last time I stuffed the music in my purse. And my son said, Mom, you're not going to do anything dumb, are you? This is a 16-year-old talk. No, never. So when I went in, I just said a little prayer, Lord, if I'm supposed to do this, give me a sign. We were seated 3 rows back from center stage. I thought, that's a pretty good sign. So when she came out and said questions and answers, did anybody have a question? I raised my hand and said, I wrote a song for you, Carol. Would you sing it? And she said, come on up, and that's all history. From there, she did it. Big time. And they said it couldn't be done, but it was.
And you have a video of that. We've seen it here.
Yeah.
I think Julie would like to see it sometime if you could show that to her.
Do you know how to operate all that equipment, Julie?
Which kind of equipment?
It's a DVD. Okay. Who did it last time? I've forgotten. Well, anyway, it's it's crazy. There's another fella from Morley named Philip Leslie, who ended up being a famous script writer. He's the one that wrote for Fibber McGee and Molly. I don't know if you're old enough to remember that show, radio, and designed the Fibber McGee's Closet. And he also wrote for I Love Lucy and different ones. And the other day I was channel surfing and just kind of flipping and got Hazel, that funny maid, you know. Screen credits, Phil Leslie. I went, whoa, and of course he's been gone many years, so these are old reruns. But so I guess something in that Morley sand that just gets us going. Plus they grew daggum good watermelons and cantaloupe. So, I don't know, and then I wrote that cookbook. Took 3 years to do that. That came about because in Morley, we always wanted to tell the old funny stories, and the two ladies that should have done it never got around to it, so we decided to do a cookbook and write the stories. So that's what Cooking and Talking's all about.
Is it on sale anywhere?
Right behind you.
Okay. Is it on Amazon?
No, I don't do that stuff. I tell you why. We had some numbers stolen once, twice in fact. So I don't go near any of that kind of thing. I don't order off of the video thing or computer or anything else. So I'm a scaredy cat. It was at Barnes and Noble. I took it out because New York people don't know how to cook, and they didn't like the binding because you got to have a cookbook that lies flat, and they want one that's real stiff. And they'd always shove the cookbook way, and they were selling them like hotcakes, but they'd shove them way off in the corner somewhere, and I got fed up with them, so I took it out. Then Hastings went bankrupt. Book Rack had them for a while, and the Visitor Center. Now I do better out of the trunk of my car. Sold one at a funeral once. Didn't mean to. The son of the deceased came up after the funeral and said, I'd like to have one of your cookbooks. We have a list, a running list of the funniest sales ever made. That's the topper. Although the other day at the dentist, one girl, well, two of the girls bought one. The other one didn't have enough money, said she'd, get back with me later, so whatever. But I don't know, they just go odd times. So that's all I know.
Got 18 more minutes.
Well, you talk.
So you can read to us, or you can...
No, that'll give people time to get up there and
or
read
you
that.
can sing to us.
No.
Oh, yeah, sing the song.
Sing the song.
Yeah, sing the song.
I want you to sing.
I'm not going to
Well,
sing.
just give us an
No
idea.
way.
Come on.
No way.
Oh, come on.
No way.
Just
No,
tell us
you
the lyrics.
you specifically asked me to bring something that was a story that I really enjoyed writing. There it is.
I wanted you to read it.
I'm not going to read all that.
Have him read it.
That's why I hung it up there.
Tell us the lyrics to your song at least. What it's about.
One of these mornings, I'm going to get up, take me a little trip around the world. I'm going to see all there is to see. Maybe something, have a tea, I can't remember them all. Maybe have a tea with the Lord High Mayor of Razzmatazz, something, and I'll sing him some jazz. Carol does it a lot better. Oh, one other funny story about her. She comes to St. Louis from time to time, on her tour. I've been trying to get her here, but we can't, the powers that be that can do it can't seem to get her done. But anyway, when she was in St. Louis, several years back, Jerry Ford, he wanted to go because he'd written that book, Dreamers. You read Dreamers? Have you? You have. Okay, that's all about Cape Girardeau musicians. Jess Stacy and that's a funny story. I'll just tell that. Jerry was looking for anybody in town that knew Jess Stacy. Do you all know who Jess Stacy was? He was a famous pianist. He ended up playing piano for Benny Goodman, the old swing band. Okay, Jess and my mom were in the same music class at the college, they called it then. So I had met him, of course, and he came to Morley one time to visit Mom and played the piano, and I was 16 and gaga over big bands, so I was really, watching Benny and watching Jess Stacy play that piano. Anyway, Jerry was trying to find somebody that knew Jess Stacy. This blows my mind still. So Jerry and his wife Margaret went down to Morley to eat at the old Morley Cafe, which has since fallen down, but it's going to get rebuilt, I hope. My cookbooks were for sale down in Morley because it's more Morley oriented. Margaret bought one, and there's a story in there about the time Jess came down to Morley to visit Mom. So Jerry had just torn up the territory trying to find anybody, and Margaret starts laughing. She said, Jerry, you won't believe this, but the woman that wrote this cookbook knew Jess Stacy. Well, of course, Jerry got in touch with me, and we did the interview, and I gave him some sheet music I had of Jess's and had some pictures and stuff. So then when he finished up the interview, he said, "Did you ever do anything fun? A dream?" I said, "Kind of." And I showed him the Carol Burnett tape. Well, he just fell over. So it's in Dreamers, too. Yeah, so it's funny how life just kind of weaves in and out. That's why I say mine's been so blessed. God has been so good to me, and it's just been awesome. How much more?
That's close enough.
I think so. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you. As Elvis would say, thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, I got to tell that story. One quick one. Elvis.
Time's up.
It's Elvis' story.
Oh, you gotta tell Elvis story.
Elvis story. Okay, somehow, I don't remember how, a bunch of us teenagers in Morley were in Sykeston. I don't know how we got there because nobody drove. We didn't even know how to put a car in reverse, you know. But anyway, we're down there ambling along the street shopping, you know. And I looked over at Malone's drugstore, and there was a little kid standing over there, a red-headed kid with this huge guitar. And that's kind of unusual in those days. And I said, "Who in the world is that?" They said, "Oh, that's old Elvis Presley. He's always trying to get somebody to listen to him and hear him sing and all that." And why didn't I walk across the street and rescue that little boy? He was red-headed, by the way. He used to dye his hair. But anyway, as Elvis would say, thank you very much. Okay. Oh, the reason I had the cane is that was called the polio epidemic down that part of Missouri. So there you go. And now I have post-polio syndrome, and that's a whole other story.
Next time.
Next time, no, they ain't gonna be on next time. Thank you.
There's always another.
Well, not hard when you're among friends.
We have plenty of time for slush ball readings. Did you guys bring any? Mark did. Anybody else? Read.
How far should I read?
About 3 minutes.
Okay. Okay.
Barb, let me say first that
What?
at the last meeting, I read part of this, and then Donna was trying to, and Marcia, you were trying to tell me things need to be changed in this story.
Yep.
And stubborn me, I was saying, I don't think so. But I like the way I had it. But I don't know, the more I thought about it, Barb and I talked, and we decided, okay, we're going to tie this to another story. So one that we already had written, but not neither of them have been published yet. I guess the one is we just did publish it differently.
Mm-hmm.
First,
Yes.
to the previous story to this. So we tied the two together, and now it's totally changed.
Okay. The fox came at 4. Woody sat on the back porch of his family's rock home eating popcorn with his little sister Amber. They ate buttered popcorn until they could eat no more. There was a little bit left in the big bowl they shared. Amber went in the house to wash her fingers. Woody walked to the garden, dumped the popcorn on a stump, and returned to the back porch. He waited to see what animals the popcorn might attract. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a red fox cautiously walked out of the woods, sniffed the air, and walked straight to the popcorn. After he ate it, he looked around and spotted Woody on the porch watching him. "Thank you for the popcorn," said the fox. "Wow, you're the first talking fox I ever heard," said Woody. "You're the first boy to ever talk back to me," said the fox. "My name is Woody. Do you have a name?" asked Woody. "My name is Forrest," said the fox. "Can you bring more popcorn at 4 o'clock tomorrow?" "Yes, I'm sure I can," said Woody. "What flavor would you like? My mom makes 5 different kinds." "The kind I ate today was good, but you can surprise me tomorrow," said Forrest. Just before 4 o'clock the next day, Woody poured sweet kettle corn on the stump. He sat on a bucket and waited for Forrest. The fox arrived at 4 o'clock and ate every bit of popcorn. "I'm glad you came back," said Woody. "I can bring popcorn every day at 4 if you like." "I would like that," said Forrest. "Your popcorn is more than tasty. It's fox-tastic." Every afternoon for the next several months, Woody put popcorn on the stump for the fox. He offered him a different flavor each week. The flavors were butter, sweet kettle corn, powdered ranch dressing, powdered cheddar cheese, and Cajun spice. Every day at 4 o'clock, Forrest came and ate the popcorn. His favorite was the buttered popcorn. Woody and Forrest had many conversations about nature. Woody was surprised when the fox told him there are over 2,000 kinds of native wildflowers growing in Missouri. Another time, Forrest told him that over 400 species of wild birds spend time in Missouri, not counting chickens. October came, and the leaves on the sassafras, dogwood, and tulip trees began to turn shades of orange and yellow. The air was crisp and cool, and the daylight hours grew shorter. One evening after Woody and his family went to bed, the time automatically fell back 1 hour on the television. The same thing happened to their cell phones and computers. That's because it was the night to leave daylight savings time and return to standard time. Woody woke up the next morning and went about his day as usual. He had no idea that the time had changed while he slept. That afternoon, Forrest showed up at his regular 4 o'clock time, but there was no popcorn on the stump. He wondered why Woody hadn't left any popcorn for him today. The fox was disappointed as he crept back into the woods. He didn't realize he was early. Woody's mother popped popcorn just before 4 o'clock. Woody placed some popcorn on the stump next to the garden. He sat on his bucket watching for his furry friend. Woody wanted to talk with the fox about frogs, but Forrest did not appear. After 15 minutes of waiting, Woody went to his room to finish his homework. Before Woody went to bed that night, he checked the stump. The popcorn was gone. Why did Forrest come late today? Woody said to himself. I wanted to talk to him. The next afternoon, Forrest once again visited the stump at what he thought was 4 o'clock. Not seeing any popcorn for the second time, the fox sadly left. An hour later that same afternoon, Woody dumped a cup of popcorn on the stump. He watched the stump for 20 minutes, but again the fox did not come. That night, Woody lay awake in his bed thinking about the fox. Why doesn't Forrest come at 4 o'clock anymore? Does he think I'm stupid? Did I say something wrong? Did he find someone else to talk to who's smarter than me? Should Mom put caramel on the popcorn? Do I stink worse than he does? Do I ask too many questions? Woody finally fell asleep. The fox was up all night because that is a fox's nature to do so. He made a point to stop by Woody's house late at night to see if he was all right. The fox saw the lights were off. That seems normal, Forrest said to himself. If the lights were on in the middle of the night, that would be unusual. Forrest left Woody's house and continued his nightly trek through the woods. Early the next morning, Woody was still thinking about the fox. He wondered if Forrest was sick, or fell in a hole, or broke his leg, or got run over on the road, or got caught in a fence, or struck by lightning. Surely he didn't just run away. Why are you so quiet this morning, Woody asked Dad. Is something wrong? Yes, my fox friend hasn't been here to eat popcorn the last 2 days, said Woody. I'm worried about him. Why don't you take a walk in the woods today and see if you can find him, said Mom. I'll pack you a good lunch. Thanks, Mom. I was hoping you'd let me go, said Woody.
Bear with me as I kind of struggle through it. This is an essay on books, and it's titled Between the Pages. And I did it a little bit different in that I broke the essay in 4 or 5 places and told a little story that kind of makes the point I'm trying to make. The love of books begins at an early age. To the young, books have a certain mystique. Excuse me. With tales of great men and women, adventures in exotic places, and the very secrets of life itself. Massive oak bookcases filled with rows of magical volumes create a desire to possess them, so one may somehow gain the power and fame of the heroes and heroines that live between the pages. They silently sleep in their beds of leather and parchment, waiting only to be awakened by an inquisitive mind. As one learns to read, one discovers books quench the thirst for knowledge and adventure. With the passing of years, the thirst returns and we drink again and again. Thus begins a lifelong love affair. This affair, like all great loves, is one to be shared and passed from one generation to another. Jimmy pushed a stool against the bookshelves that covered the wall in the north wing of the house. Grandpa wouldn't mind, he told himself as he slid a volume from the top shelf. He settled into the large overstuffed chair by the window where his grandfather loved to read. "Grandpa, I miss you," he said out loud, as he felt the soft leather cover on the book his grandfather had read to him the last summer they were together. He tipped the book and blew a light film of dust from the gilded edge, opened it to the page marked with a small strip of paper, and slowly began to read. Books are the definitive records of great thoughts, of dreams and ideas, of history and theology. They make us laugh and cry, and in the solstice of our sorrow and despair, they bring hope, comfort, and the promise of tomorrow. She sat by the window overlooking the garden. Her eyesight was failing, and she could not see the dirt on the window panes. "I wonder why the hummingbirds no longer visit my garden," she thought, not realizing she could not see the tiny birds flitting among the weeds and trumpet vines that choked the unattended flower beds. She rocked gently for a moment, then reached for the book that rested on the crocheted doily covering the table by her chair. The book's black cover was worn, its golden letters now tarnished, its pages soiled from years of use. It fell open to a familiar page, and she lifted her reading glasses and slowly read, "I will never leave thee, nor must forsake thee." Books are the ultimate form of entertainment, for they allow the reader to control a situation. With spoken words, one is at the mercy of the speaker, but the written word can be paced, slowed to savor every word, or skimmed quickly for just the high points. One may read the ending first if they desire, or read passages over to experience their delight again and again. A book may be selected to fit the mood of the reader, suspense, adventure, or the escape of a great character from the creative mind of the author. One may travel through time and space with people bigger than life to places impossible to reach any other way. The late August sun was unmerciful. Its heat shimmered and danced, and the construction crew sighed with relief when the foreman called a halt at midday. They collected their lunches and fanned out in the shade of a giant oak tree, except for a heavy, balding man named Slovak. He climbed the hill behind the construction site and dropped to the ground beneath a lone tree that had been spared when the ridge was cleared. He leaned against the rough bark and closed his eyes, waiting for his breathing to slow. He removed his sweat-stained cap, exposing his white forehead and balding dome, which looked out of place over his deeply tanned face. Opening his lunch bucket, he gazed down on the men eating in the shade below. "I guess they think I'm not friendly," he thought, always eating alone. Unwrapping a sandwich, he took a large bite and opened the paperback book that had been wedged beside his thermos and started to read. Instantly, he was transported from the hot, dusty hill to the cool shade of mountain pines along an old western trail. Books are the great storehouse of words. The sharp contrast of the black ink on the gleaming white pages makes the words jump to the eye. Clear, pure words without accent or brogue to taint their meaning, and with permanent punctuation to prevent any misunderstanding. Most spoken words die with their echoes, but the written word, bound into books, endures. They are collected, stored, hoarded, and treasured to be enjoyed by generations yet unborn. Books can teach one laws or crafts or technical equations, and with their great organization of thoughts, they have become part of everyday life. The trial had been going badly, with the prosecutor countering Delaney's every attempt to create doubt on the guilt of his client. He's innocent, he thought, and I must find a way to convince the jury. He poured a cup of bitter black coffee and returned a large stack of law books to the bookcase. He removed one last volume from the end of the shelf, sipping his coffee slowly, turning the pages and letting his mind drift back over the events of the day. Delaney was tired, very tired, his nerves on edge, and with the phone's sharp ring, he spilled coffee across the open book. He grabbed the receiver to be greeted by a dial tone. Steady hum. Damn, he said. He slammed the receiver down and watched the brown stain steadily across the page. Delaney's gaze jumped ahead of the advancing liquid and stopped on a heading marked in bold type, Boggs versus Hayes, Sacramento, California, 1947. A charge of energy surged through his body. The answer, of course, Boggs versus Hayes. To the eye, there is no beauty that can surpass that of a perfect rose. To the mind, there is no beauty that can surpass that of a perfect book. To the heart, no gift can surpass that of a book that expresses a commitment of love. The written word filled with emotion can reach to the very center of the soul. The day before yesterday, flowers had arrived. Yesterday, a large box of chocolates. And today, another package arrived from Tom. She had recognized his handwriting on the plain paper wrapper. Inside was a small spiral notebook with a large red heart drawn on the cover. She turned to the first page, and there in Tom's neat lettering she read, "The poems in this book are written to the one I love. Though the words are not perfect, the love they bring is rich and deep and pure. As you read them, may our hearts touch as one. Love, Tom." She clutched the book to her breast, and her eyes filled with tears. It has been said a picture is worth 1,000 words, but in reality, a word can create 1,000 pictures of the mind that are more vivid than anything the eye can see. When one reads, they involve their imagination, and this use of imagination has ensured the popularity of books even in this age of electronic entertainment. Movies and television require only a passive form of involvement, with little or no use of imagination. The love of books is a truly ageless affair where adjectives and adverbs are magically linked to their nouns and verbs, weaving a tapestry of beauty, adventure, intrigue that captures the heart for a lifetime. Surely there can be no greater vocation than that of a writer. He pinched the bridge of his nose and rested his eyes. He had been working on the manuscript for hours with a burning desire to make this the best thing he had ever written. He returned to the typewriter, and beads of perspiration glistened on his forehead as he concentrated and worked on into the night. He had always wanted to write, but had put it off until the kids were raised and he had more time. Now the years were tumbling into his lap faster than he could count them. So now he wrote part of every day as if in desperation to put his thoughts on paper before time dimmed them away. He feared he could never capture the feelings of love and hate and pain and joy, but somehow they were always there, coming through the paragraphs of copy. In morning's early light, the rains came. The words were no longer flowing, and he fell back in his chair and listened to the rain blowing against the window. Then he slept and dreamed of the world between the pages.
Well, this is by Marianne. This is called Sophie's New Scarf. Sophie, a little red dachshund, lives in the house on Little Street in a little town called Jasper Springs. She has 2 sisters and 1 brother. One day, Mama made scarves for each of them, blue for her brother Jesse, yellow for Sarah, purple for Lucy, and a bright pink scarf for Sophie. Sophie thought her scarf was the prettiest she had ever seen, for Mama had made it, and nobody can make anything quite as nice as Mama can. Her brothers and sisters happily pranced about, proudly wearing their scarves. Of all the pretty scarves, Sophie liked hers best. She decided to go for a walk to show off her pretty bright pink scarf. She walked about a block down Little Street and met Tina the turtle, wearing the most beautiful pink ribbon Sophie had ever seen. "Hi, Sophie, what a beautiful scarf. You look like a princess on your way to a ball. How about trading my pink ribbons for your scarf?" "Thank you, Tina." Sophie eyed the ribbons, for she had always wanted some pink ribbons. "Oh, no, I couldn't. My scarf is much nicer. Although your ribbons are very pretty. Besides, my mama made it for me." "Goodbye, Tina," Sophie said. "Goodbye, Sophie." Sophie pitter-pattered further down Little Street. Soon Sophie met a very old golden retriever who bowed very low. "Good afternoon, Miss Sophie." Good afternoon, Miss Sophie. "A mighty fine scarf you have there." "Good afternoon, sir, and thank you. Where can I buy a scarf such as yours, fine as yours? My wife would love to have a scarf like that. My mama made it for me, and it's not for sale. Goodbye, sir." "Goodbye, Sophie." Sophie pitter-pattered on down Little Street. "Sophie, is that you, Sophie?" Sophie looked up towards the sky just as Betsy, a beautiful black and yellow monarch butterfly, landed on her bright pink scarf. "I thought that was you. What a lovely scarf you're wearing. It's so bright and colorful, pretty as a flower it is. Where'd you get such a beautiful scarf?" "Thank you, Betsy. My mama made it for me." Sophie blinked her eyes and smiled at her friend. "What a treasure. I must be on my way. Goodbye, Betsy." "Goodbye, Sophie." Betsy gracefully flew away, and Sophie pitter-pattered on down Little Street. At the end of Little Street is a beautiful park where Sophie and her brothers and sisters like to play. Sophie pitter-pattered into the park past the swings and merry-go-round. In the center of the park is a beautiful water fountain where crystal-clear water falls into a small pond. Reba, Robin Redbreast, sat perched on top of the fountain, singing. Reba stopped singing and said, "Sophie, you look amazing. What a gorgeous scarf." Lifting the white pearls that decorated her feathered neck, "I'll trade my precious pearls for your bright pink scarf." Sophie had always admired Reba's precious pearls. "I'm sorry, Reba. My mama made this scarf, and it's worth more to me than precious pearls." Realizing how long she had been gone, Sophie said to Reba, "I must be going. It's getting late, and it will soon be time for dinner. Goodbye, Reba." "Goodbye, Sophie." Sophie turned and pitter-pattered home as fast as her little legs could go. When she returned home, Sophie told her brothers and sisters about her adventure down Little Street. "You didn't trade your scarf for Reba's precious pearls?" Sarah asked unbelievably. "Or Tina's pink ribbons?" Lucy asked, for she knew how much Sophie liked Tina's ribbons. A surprised Jessie added, "You turned down money? Just think about what you could buy with the money." Proudly, Mama hugged Sophie tight and said if you wore precious pearls or pink ribbons, you wouldn't look more beautiful than you do in your bright pink scarf. Sophie snuggled up to Mama and said, "There's not anything as nice as the scarf that Mama made for me." Sit. Thank you.
The flight, and this is PBS Crew 10, right? Okay. The flight to Memphis, Malaya's first flight ever, was not a pleasant one. The plane's tail wagged back and forth constantly, making her airsick. There was a stiff southwest wind, which made the southbound craft feel like it was flying sideways. Jim tried to make the flight more pleasant with lively conversation. He asked about Malaya's career and asked many more questions after finding out about the crew and their mission. He even offered his crop dusting business for a feature if Malaya thought it might do. Luckily, they were traveling 100 miles per hour, and the flight didn't take long. They made it to Memphis by 11:30. Jim flew over the crop dusting strip next to the Mississippi River, not far from downtown Memphis and the St. Jude Hospital. He swung out over the mighty Mississippi down to Mud Island and then circled over St. Jude and the Pyramid. He headed back north toward the airstrip and dipped the wing on Malea's side. "Can you see the wind sock?" he asked. She remembered from her junior Civil Air Patrol classes that the wind sock at the airport indicated wind direction, and to some degree wind speed. She scanned the runway and spotted 2 socks midway. Both were pointing across the runway and extended fully. "There's 2, a little one and a big one," she replied. "Is either fully extended?" "Yes." "Which one?" "Both." The plane suddenly whooshed sideways by a gust of wind. The socks were now on Jim's side. He said, "We've got at least a 31 mile an hour crosswind. We're going to have to do a passenger landing. Strap yourself in tight, hold on to those boobs, and we're going to do a little bouncing." He straightened the control console wheel to the straight ahead position, and the plane flew sideways past the landing strip. Then he cut the power, banked right, and dropped down to 50 feet above a pasture next to the runway. He steered straight across the windsocks, watching to see if they suddenly drop with a loss of wind velocity, then ascending to 10 feet above the ground. Cows, frightened by the plane, began running in all directions. He pulled up to clear a bull and then dropped down 5 feet across the grass. Malaya looked out her side window. The ground was speeding by at what looked like 40 or 50 miles an hour. Jim powered back some more and pulled up on the console. The tail of the plane dropped and the speed slowed. It looked like they were barely moving in relation to the ground. The tail touched down and Jim nailed the throttle. The engine roared, but the front of the plane dove forward as the front wheels touched soft ground. The propeller flung bits of grass into the air, but lifted just before it found dirt, and the craft sprang back into the sky. Malaya, sure she was going to die, shrieked, "You think we can maybe find a real airport?" Jim smiled disarmingly and replied, "If we do, you won't have any good stories to tell your grandkids." Malaya, not amused, replied, "I may not live long enough to have grandkids with you flying this cracker box." Jim smiled. "I'll get you down in one piece, sister. Grab your gear and hand me the rope, tie to the cargo bay door, and we'll do a drop." A what?" "The ground is too soft to land," he explained. "I only need 40 miles an hour for this bird to touch down, and we have a 30 mile an hour headwind. I'll go in for another pass, and you jump out. I'll close the door with the rope." "You're kidding." "No, just providing stories for your grandkids." Malaya glared at the old duffer, but he smiled and didn't break. Do or die. This was going to be her exit, either from the plane or from life. She took off the headset, climbed back into the cargo jump area to grab her carry-on bag. She handed Jim the end of the rope, then positioned herself in the seat closest to the cargo door. Jim swung the plane around for another pass. He dipped down to within 5 feet of the pasture and gave Malaya the signal to open the door. She pushed it open, tossed her carry-on bag out, nearly hitting a cow, and waited for the signal. Jim slowed, dropped the tail, and signaled. Malaya smiled, shot him a middle finger salute, turned and jumped. She remembered from the air patrol days to tuck and roll when she landed. So as her feet touched down, she curled into a ball, tumbled across the grass, landing at the edge of the runway. She looked up to see the plane suspended just 2 feet above the earth, hover for a split second, Jim using the blast from a propeller to create lift under the wings, then loft into the air. She stood up with only a couple of grass stains on her jeans and watched as he circled around, dipping a wing to bid her adieu. She stood and watched as he zoomed out of sight, clipping yet another of the set of branches at the far end of the landing strip.